All right, let's get into this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going somewhere kind of unsettling. A hidden dimension of American racism.
Ooh, yeah.
We're going to talk about sundown towns,
Yeah.
places where historically
Right.
Black people were just straight up unwelcome after dark,
Yeah.
sometimes even facing threats of violence.
It's wild because it wasn't just like some fringe thing. This was widespread across the U.S., especially between the late 1800s and mid-1900s.
Huh?
And the legacy of those times, it still echoes today.
Yeah.
So we're going to dig into some excerpts about Tougaloo College, a historically Black institution down in Mississippi,
Okay.
doing vital work maintaining the nation's only active database of these sundown towns.
Okay, so let's break this down. What exactly were sundown towns?
So imagine towns where signs literally warned Black folks to be out by sundown.
Wow.
I mean, the term itself is chilling, but it goes way deeper than just signs. We're talking laws designed to keep Black people out, intimidation tactics, even outright violence. The goal was to make sure Black folks didn't even think about settling in or, in many cases, even passing through after dark.
And Tougaloo College, they're like on the front lines of keeping this history alive, right?
Yeah.
Why is their work so important?
I think it's crucial on multiple levels. First, they're preserving this history, making sure we don't forget this dark chapter. But think about this.
Yeah.
They also have a map
Right.
with red dots marking each sundown town.
Okay.
And it's not just a historical record, it's a real-time tool for safety and awareness.
Wow.
Imagine being a Black traveler today and being able to check if a place you're heading to has this kind of history that could literally be life-saving.
Yeah, I get chills just thinking about that.
Right.
So this database,
Yeah.
was it inspired by anything in particular?
Absolutely. It's based on sociologist James Loewen's book, Sundown Towns, A Hidden Dimension of American Racism. He spent years documenting this phenomenon. His work laid the groundwork for what Tougaloo College is doing today,
Okay.
taking it even further.
It was really fascinating is that the database isn't static.
Right.
It's constantly being updated with new information, historical records, personal stories, even present-day observations from people who have experienced this exclusion firsthand.
And you know what's truly disturbing?
What's that?
The map is covered in red dots. Like, a lot of it.
Wow.
It really highlights just how widespread this issue was, and to some degree, still is.
So it's not just a thing of the past.
No.
These red dots,
Right.
they represent real experiences people are still having today, right?
Exactly. We're talking about racial profiling, harassment, intimidation, things that make it clear you're not welcome in certain places simply because of the color of your skin.
Wow.
The source shares some examples, and they're truly chilling. Imagine driving through a town and suddenly noticing you're being followed.
Yeah.
Maybe by a police car,
Right.
maybe just by locals, or walking into a store and feeling every eye on you, making it clear you're not welcome.
Yeah.
Some people even report receiving outright threats.
It makes you think about the emotional and psychological toll
Right.
of living with that constant fear, always wondering if you're safe.
Right. It's a trauma that ripples through generations.
Right.
And that's why what Tougaloo College is doing is so powerful.
Yeah.
They're not just preserving history.
Right.
They're providing a tool for awareness, for safety, and hopefully for accountability and change.
It's like they're shining a light on this dark corner of American history,
Yeah.
forcing us to confront it. But is confronting it enough?
Yeah.
What can we actually do to dismantle this deeply rooted system of racism that sundown towns represent?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll be exploring in the next part of this deep dive.
All right, stay with us.
Welcome back to our deep dive into sundown towns. In part 1, we explored what they are and how Tougaloo College is documenting them. Now let's dig a little deeper into how these towns actually operated.
Right.
What were the tactics used to keep Black folks out?
Right. Because it wasn't just about posting signs, right?
Right.
It feels like there had to be a whole system in place.
Absolutely. And the chilling part is the variety of methods employed. It was a combination of legal maneuvers, social pressure, and, sadly, outright violence. It was all about creating an environment where Black people knew they weren't welcome.
You mentioned legal maneuvers.
Yeah.
What did those look like in practice?
So think zoning laws.
Okay.
Some towns deliberately zoned residential areas to exclude Black people or make it difficult for Black-owned businesses to open up shop. It was a way to control where Black people could and couldn't be,
Right.
even if it wasn't explicitly written as racial exclusion.
So it was built into the fabric of the town itself.
Yeah.
Almost like an invisible wall.
Exactly. And then there's the social pressure aspect.
Yeah.
Think about the power of rumors, gossip, that kind of unspoken code of who belonged and who didn't. White residents could make it very clear that Black people weren't part of the community, using intimidation tactics to drive them out.
I can only imagine how suffocating that must have felt, constantly being watched, judged, made to feel like you didn't belong.
Right. And tragically, it often escalated beyond those unspoken pressures. The source mentions examples of Black people being harassed, threatened, even physically attacked, sometimes fatally.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder of how deeply ingrained racism was and how it manifested in horrifying ways.
It's heartbreaking to think that such blatant racism was not only accepted, but almost encouraged in these places.
And keep in mind, this wasn't just happening in some far-off rural towns.
Right.
Sundown towns existed all over the country, in every region. They were woven into the American landscape.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the question of impact.
Right.
How has this history of exclusion continued to affect communities today?
Right, because we know this wasn't just a historical blip.
No.
The legacy lives on, doesn't it?
It does. The trauma of those experiences has been passed down through generations, leaving deep scars on individuals and communities.
Right.
It shapes how people see themselves, how they see the world,
Yeah.
and it can make it incredibly difficult to break free from cycles of poverty and inequality.
The source talks about the importance of personal testimonies.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing firsthand accounts from people who lived through this really brings it home, doesn't it?
Right.
It makes it more than just dates and facts.
Absolutely. Those stories capture the fear, the humiliation, the sense of powerlessness that Black people face in these towns. And they remind us that this isn't just about the past. It's about how that past shapes the present. We're talking about the continued presence of racial profiling, housing discrimination,
Right.
and unequal access to resources and opportunities.
So it's like these sundown towns cast a long shadow,
Right.
even if they're not explicitly operating in the same way anymore.
Exactly. And think about the economic impact. If you're systematically excluded from living and working in certain areas, that creates huge barriers to building wealth, to achieving a certain level of stability and security.
And then there's the psychological toll.
Yeah.
That constant feeling of being unwelcome, of being on edge, always wondering if you're going to be targeted because of the color of your skin. It takes a huge toll.
It creates a kind of pervasive anxiety,
Right.
a sense of hypervigilance that can have lasting effects on mental health and well-being.
Yeah.
It's a heavy burden to carry.
So we've uncovered some really dark aspects of American history in this deep dive. But I keep thinking, what's the point of knowing all this if we don't do something about it?
Right.
What are the solutions, the ways we can push back against this legacy of exclusion?
That's where we need to shift our focus now. Knowing this history is crucial, but it's only the first step. We need to move from awareness to action.
Right.
And that's what we'll explore in part 3 of this deep dive.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back. We've been on this heavy journey exploring sundown towns, uncovering how they operated and the devastating impact they had,
Right.
and how that legacy still lingers today.
Yeah.
But now, the big question,
Mm-hmm.
what do we do about it?
Yeah. It can feel daunting, right? The system of racism is so deeply rooted, but knowing about it, acknowledging it, that's the first step toward dismantling it.
Okay, awareness is key.
Mm.
But what are the concrete actions we can take? Where do we go from here?
Well, the source material highlights a few important avenues.
Okay.
One is education. We need to ensure that the history of sundown towns is taught in schools,
Right.
not just as a side note, but as a central piece of understanding American racism.
So not just knowing the facts, but understanding the deeper implications, the systemic nature of it all.
Exactly. We need to give young people the tools to recognize and challenge racism in all its forms. And this education isn't just for kids either. Adults need to engage with this history too.
Right.
We all have a role to play.
Education is foundational, for sure. But what can we do at a more grassroots level
Yeah.
right here, right now?
That's where community advocacy comes in. People need to hold their local governments and organizations accountable. Push them to acknowledge this history, apologize for any wrongdoing,
Right.
and implement policies that promote real inclusivity.
So things like town hall meetings, writing to local representatives, maybe even organizing protests, and just having honest conversations with friends and family about this issue.
All of those things can make a difference. Remember, change often starts at the local level. When communities begin to address their own history of exclusion, it creates a ripple effect.
And the source also mentions policy reform as a key solution. What kind of policies are we talking about? What would real change look like in that arena?
We need laws and practices that guarantee equal treatment and safety for everyone, no matter their race. This means fair housing policies, strong anti-discrimination laws, and police reforms that specifically address racial profiling. It's about making sure everyone has an equal shot at living and thriving in a community.
So we're talking a multifaceted approach,
Mm-hmm.
education to raise awareness,
Right.
community advocacy to push for change at the local level,
Yeah.
and policy reform to address those systemic issues.
And it's not just about dismantling harmful systems,
Right.
it's also about building a more just and equitable society in their place.
Yeah.
That means investing in communities that have been marginalized,
Right.
promoting diversity and inclusion in every aspect of life, and creating opportunities for everyone to succeed.
We've covered a lot of heavy stuff in this deep dive. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, even a bit hopeless after learning about this part of American history.
Yeah, I understand that feeling. But here's the important thing. Every single person has the power to make a difference. You don't have to be a politician or a celebrity to create change.
Right. It's not about waiting for someone else to fix it. It's about what we can do in our own spheres of influence.
Right, exactly. Educate yourself, have those tough conversations, support organizations fighting for racial justice. Those are all meaningful actions. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply listen to and believe the experiences of people of color.
Right.
Their stories matter, their pain is real,
Yeah.
and their voices deserve to be heard.
That's such an important reminder. As we wrap up this deep dive into sundown towns, we want to leave you with this. Change is possible, but it requires all of us to be active participants. Let's learn from the past, challenge injustice in the present, and build a better future for everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.